Well, I'll give him the name that I go by, which is Andy Cohen. It's really Andrew, but let's work with Andy, okay? And the second part of the question is?
Tell us a little about who you are.
I am the senior member of the Harrisonburg City School Board. I'm in my 12th year. I'm looking forward to retiring from that in about 5 months. I'm a past chairman of the board. I'm an emeritus professor from JMU, where I taught for 35 years. And that's who I am. I'm the proud grandfather of 4 grandchildren, the youngest of whom is older than you. She's 20.
And is it your first time seeing the exhibit? If not, how did you first become connected to the board?
I became aware of the exhibit first at Lucy Sims School, because I was part of a group that would meet there on a regular basis on Mondays, and I would walk through the halls and see at least the early version of this exhibit. The other point is here, I was on the building committee that built this building and Bluestone Elementary as well. And I grew up in an unusual period of time in the United States because I lived in a desegregated environment. 25% of my classmates were African Americans in the 1950s, pre-Brown versus Board of Education. And I didn't really understand segregation because my life was not segregated. If I looked around a little bit, I became aware of it when I was a high school student. Nevertheless, when I graduated from high school a long time ago, for the first time in the history of that school, we had leadership of the senior class who are African Americans. African American head of the student council, our high school graduating class secretary is African American. 2 years later, that school had its first high school senior president who was African American. Later went on to great expertise, became ultimately superintendent of schools of the entire, I grew up in Detroit, Michigan. So that's my history and my connection. I'm also connected with Councilwoman Monica Robinson. Why? Because she went to high school with my son, and he was the drum major, and she played in his band, which is how we first connected, and I knew her. So that's who I am, a little bit of my history. I also was chairman of the school board when we were deciding on names. And one of the important names that we decided on was for the pre-K center, Elon Rhodes, one of the important historical African Americans in the Harrisonburg community. That was why I came up to say, you know, it's a tiny little footnote, but it's one I think can be added to the story, that a celebration of community. The school board of Harrisonburg City opted consciously to name that center after an African American leader in our community.
Is there a particular aspect of the project, or at least in the exhibit, whether it be a photograph, a story, or idea, that especially resonates with you?
It's the entire scope. There's no individual piece of it, but the entire scope of it to celebrate. What they say, when I grew up, it was sort of, you shrug your shoulders, yeah. The only thing my African American friends and I didn't do when I was growing up is they didn't come to synagogue with me because they weren't Jewish.
Now being available to Rocktown High School teachers, students,
I think it's important. I think that in educating young people, every resource that we can get our hands on that helps them connect in a real way other than just words on a page is crucial, which is why when we hired Superintendent Michael Richards, his guiding light at the time was, the world is my classroom. And that's so important because growing up, your world tends to be pretty cloistered, small pieces, next door neighbors, people you go to church with, and other organizations. But you live in a larger world. And that world really, in some sense, has shrunk a lot over my lifetime in the sense of our ability to communicate with one another and to be part of a common humanity. So there you go.